Hey, Iker Ray is back. Been on a long hiatus. I tell you, been in my mystical, magical cave, get some clarity on some things. So it's gonna be a little, a little plot twist in this video right here. We're gonna talk about the Yara runic energy and how we may utilize Yara to speed up time. But I'm gonna talk about time cycles and how time cycles impact global consciousness. So I'm going to share a little bit of information out of this book, The Yugas, Keys to Understanding Our Hidden Past, Emerging Energy Age, and Enlightened Future. So for those who are not up on time cycles, we're leaving out of what is called the Kali Yuga cycle. In Kali Yuga cycle, this energy permeates the globe. It permeates global consciousness. So in the Kali Yuga cycle, it is the lowest of the cycles. That means degenerate behavior, tyrants, slavery. That is the order of the day when we're in this Kali Yuga cycle. I'm going to share some information regarding how this energy has played out in many parts of the world without entering into what is called the Dharapara cycle, elevation of consciousness, but a long way to go before we get here into the golden ages. So most people thinking that we're going to go from the Kali cycle to the Satya Yuga cycle or the golden age cycle. They haven't studied time cycles at all. You're not gonna book all these different levels of consciousness, which is thousands of years into the future. If you're gonna go from Kali to the Satya Yuga cycle or the golden age, that means you're going to do this within yourself. You're going to find those practices that help to elevate your consciousness. Otherwise, you'll be going through this cycle of time, reincarnated until you get to the golden age cycle, which could be 100,000 years from now. I tell you, a long time. So I'm going to share a little information regarding these cycles. To truly understand Kali Yuga, we need to look below the surface of history. Historians do not dwell on the common man. He is just not interesting. Yet, if we are to understand the Yugas, we must focus on awareness, capabilities, motivations, and activities of the common man. Um, Not on the ruling elite, the highly educated, or those whose accomplishments in art, philosophy, and literature give them lasting fame. What one discovers after filtering out the prominent people and events, so to speak, is that the vast majority of people who lived during Kali Yuga were farmers, herdsmen, laborers, artisans, conscripted soldiers, servants, or slaves. Pleasure was simple, sensory, and earthy, eating, drinking, and sex. Good fortune was rudimentary and tangible. Food, clothing, few possessions, activities was basic, laboring long and hard to stay alive, enjoying the pleasures that came enduring hardship. Life expectancy was low, disease, misfortune, and famine were commonplace. Do any of these things sound familiar to you? Yes, because that's the order of the day in this low cycle of the Kali Yuga cycle. Average people were passively accepting their lot. Their passivity expressed itself as fatalistic acceptance of circumstances, lack of will to change, or even the belief they could change circumstances. There was little social mobility. Chances were that the circumstances you were born into, whether as a carpenter, farmer, or artisan, were the circumstances you would likely die in. India's caste system hardened into a hereditary straitjacket during Kali Yuga. Emperors, Caesars, and kings passed on their thrones to their heirs. Farmers were farmers from generation upon generation. Almost no one could read or write. Education or even access to writing was thought was limited to a tiny percentage of the population. From China to Rome, the written word was preserved, if it was preserved at all, by the wealthy and by religious communities such as monasteries. Even the knowledge was preserved was done so very selectively. Intolerance for other viewpoints was the norm. During Kali Yuga, ignorance was all but willful. Nearly all prior knowledge was deliberately destroyed during Kali Yuga. Two examples stand out. In the 3rd century AD, the Library of Alexandria was destroyed along with hundreds of thousands of volumes of ancient writings, and approximately 500 years earlier, the Emperor Qin Shi Huangdi of China had all the books in China burned. So we're going to get into the following dates, and destruction gives us a glimpse of the profound level of intolerance and ignorance that characterized Kali Yuga. In 527 BC, the Persians burned Egyptian temples and papyri. 490 BC, the Persians destroyed literary works of Athens. In 330 BC, Alexander in Persepolis destroyed 12,000 volumes of the Magi. Let that sink in for a minute. This Alexander guy destroys 12,000 volumes of the Magi. Imagine if we had those scrolls, 12,000 books of real magic. It was into real magic back then. We no Amazon or no Google back then. It was into real magic. We're dealing with fragments right now, doing the best we can in this low cycle. In 214 BC, Chinese Emperor Qi Shi Huangdi has all the books in China burned. So we only talk about the books burned in Alexandria, but as you have just learned, book burnings was taking place in many parts of the world, and it had to do with the Kali Yuga cycle of consciousness. In 146 BC, the Romans destroyed 500,000 Phoenician scrolls at Carthage. 52 BC, Julius Caesar destroys the library at the Druids College. 250 AD, library at Pergamum destroyed by zealous Christians. In 272 AD, the main library of Alexandria destroyed by the Romans. And in 391 AD, Theophilus levels the daughter library at Alexandria. So we see 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10 different cases of books being destroyed in various points on the planet, not just in the area we mostly focus on in the temples of Egypt and Alexandria being destroyed. Many temples, many libraries were destroyed all over the world, and it was all due to the Kali Yuga cycle. This is the darkest of the cycles when you get into the time cycles. Ignorance, stupidity, slavery, all reign supreme. But we're coming out of this cycle into what is called the Dharapara cycle. I'll get into that in a few moments. Not only profoundly ignorant, more often than not, the people of Kali Yuga were considered property, either as outright slaves or virtual slaves, such as serfs, who were tied to the land and subject to the lord of the land. Women were subject to their husbands and fathers. Human rights, as we understand them today, did not exist. Nowhere is this more apparent than in the Roman Empire. Rome was built on the backs and lives of slaves, usually drawn from peoples conquered by Roman armies. Though slavery still exists today, hidden in dark corners of society, in Kali Yuga, it was commonplace. It was also brutal. Owners had the power of life and death over their slaves. Perhaps most shocking to our sensibility today is the killing of slaves for entertainment in the Colosseum of Rome, a practice that continued for 5 centuries. The Emperor Trajan in the 2nd century AD provided a spectacle during which 10,000 slaves were killed before the cheering crowd in one day. Although slavery to this degree did not exist in China and India during Kali Yuga, historians generally agree that these regions had no need to bring in slaves from elsewhere. Both India and China had sufficiently large populations and well-established feudal systems. The virtual slavery of self-serfdom was already in place. Slavery was well established also among the Aztecs. So we see that slavery was running rampant in many, many parts of the world before it even got into 4 or 5 years ago coming out of West Africa. Kali Yuga brutality wasn't confined to the treatment of slaves. Kali Yuga was also a time of conquest and subjugation by force. Kali Yuga was a time of Alexander, Emperor Qin of China, Julius Caesar, Genghis Khan, and Tamerlane just to name a few of the better known men who ruthlessly conquered and subjugated vast territories. In the process of conquering armies, burned cities to the ground, put the inhabitants to the sword, killed for sport, tortured for example, enslaved or raped. Tamerlane is said to have built a mountain of 60,000 human heads during the sacking of a city. If a Roman general felt that his troops were getting out of line and needed to be reined in, he would decimate them, having every 10th man beaten to death by his comrades as an object lesson to them all. So we see here in the Kali Yuga cycle, stupidity reigns supreme, and it's all based on time cycles. When you don't learn time cycles, you would think, well, a people started to go down when another group of people invaded. Why did these people invade in the first place? Is due to time cycles. This is energy obviously connected with the stars. When the stars align in a certain way, it impacts global consciousness. It ain't personal. It's global consciousness. Also, the zodiac influence also impacts global consciousness. So if you're not doing anything to elevate beyond this cycle of Kali Yuga consciousness, you're going to be moved and swayed by the consciousness that is permeating the world right now. Not just in a particular culture, but this is global. You know what I'm saying? One thing you're going to learn when you study time cycles, as I'm sharing this information, what you're being tricked to believe for the most part, is that somebody is coming to save you. You just learned about 10 minutes of atrocities that took place in many parts of the world under the Kali Yuga cycle, and you know one thing is not coming. There's nobody came to save these people. No spaceships, none of that shit came to save these people. Elevation of consciousness, especially during the Kali Yuga cycle, is your savior. You must elevate yourself beyond the Kali Yuga cycle. And that's going to deal with consciousness. You know what I'm saying? Those practices, those meditations, those bursts of power, whatever you can find that's going to elevate your consciousness, this is going to move you beyond this cycle. Otherwise, you're going to be moving very slow along this scale, reincarnation after reincarnation, until you get into what is called the silver age or a golden age or even a bronze age. It's a higher frequency than Kali, but if you're going to get to a golden age in the Kali Yuga cycle, that means you're going to align yourself with the right spiritual practices that is going to be conducive to elevating yourself. Most of the world religions existed during Kali Yuga: Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Christianity. Though exalted in their origins, the common man's practice of them was ritualistic, daily prayer, daily offerings, daily sacrifice. So this is the order of the day for the Kali Yuga cycle. This is the cycle that we're in or coming out of right now. It says here, the Emperor Trajan is considered to have ruled the Roman Empire at the peak of its power in the 2nd century AD. The empire was at its largest, wealthiest, and most influential. All roads led to Rome, and all of the land and peoples around the Mediterranean Sea, and as far away as England, was subject to Rome's dominion. Then gradually, Rome began to lose control of its empire. Internal power struggles split Europe in two. External threats such as the Vandals and the Goths began to bear back the Roman armies. By the 5th century AD, invaders had sacked the city of Rome repeatedly. The last Roman ruler was killed in 476 AD, considered by the most historians to be the end of the Roman Empire. So we see this is happening right now in the West. Internal conflict. They are falling apart. They're actually falling, but that does not mean they're not going to do what they got to do to try to stay in power and to take out as many people as they can. They're doing that right now, the tyrants. So you have to work on ways to protect yourself from the onslaught of negative energies that is bombarding the planet right now. You know what I'm saying? Contrary to what the Google scholars are teaching you, You're not going to eat your way out of this. The fluffy practices are going to get you in trouble. Laying in the sun and letting the sun bathe your skin, sitting by some river or some lake, soaking up the sun and eating, mushrooms and shit, that is not going to get it in the Kali Yuga cycle. Or even moving out of Kali Yuga. So you're going to have to find something to elevate your consciousness. This is reconnecting with your soul first. Reconnect with the wisdom and guidance of your soul. Connect with your more ancient ancestors. Make sure you connect with your ancient ancestors and ask them, what can I do to elevate my consciousness? Now, if you're one of those who refuse to do anything to elevate yourself, then that's your prerogative, you know what I'm saying? But as a student of knowledge, 32 years on the path, studying the Yuga cycles, no one ate their way into higher consciousness. There's a big thing. There's nothing wrong with vegan. I'm not attacking veganism and shit. It's just a warning to the newbies on the path. You're going to have to find practices to elevate your consciousness. You know what I'm saying? All this technology and stuff has made a lot of people really lazy, and not many people really don't want to do anything, but basically listen to videos all day and wait on a savior, wait on spaceships, wait on somebody, some guru to come back from the dead and save them. Nobody saved these people in Kali Yuga cycle. Mind you, we've been around this cycle of time for eons of time. No savior came to save these people. Elevation of consciousness. You'll read, once you study Kali Yuga cycle, you'll read that there was a handful of people, even in this cycle, that were exceptional at what they did. Artists, musicians, poets, whatever. You're going to always have those sprinkles of light, even in the darkest of time. These are exceptional people born into this lower cycle to help inspire those in the lower worlds, those teachers with those practices I'm talking about, descended into this lower realm to help all they could to elevate themselves beyond this vibration. So it's up to you, it's your choice obviously, to find those practices to elevate yourself beyond this Iron Age, this Kali Yuga cycle. Sure, we're moving into the Bronze Age. You're not going from the Iron Age to the Golden Age. And that's not how time cycles work. The only way you're going to go from the Iron Age or Kali cycle to the Satya or the Golden Age is through spiritual practices and your own personal evolution. Otherwise, you're going to be going around this year cycle, which takes 24,000 years, 26,000 years to complete this cycle. It's very possible, and there's many people around the world who are transforming themselves into light and evaporating out of here. Dude, this is some research for you. Research immortality, transformation into light. You're going to find various cases from all over the place of people aligning themselves with the right practices, and they are checking out of here via transforming into light, like Lucy did in the movie. Except it's not a movie, it's the real deal, and it's very possible. Once you find that work, you obviously got to work it. But it's very possible to go from Kali to the Golden Age cycle of consciousness. It's all about consciousness, you know what I'm saying? So, in China, the Emperor Qin, from whose name China ruthlessly united the 7 warring provinces of China in the 3rd century BC. Centuries of rule under one emperor finally collapsed in the 3rd century AD with the fall of the Han Dynasty. The Chinese refer to these 3 centuries of fragmentation and turmoil that followed as the period of utter darkness. Amidst near total absence of law and order, the country was ravaged by bandits, former farmers who had lost their crops and villages, and starving soldiers learned to survive by violence. From the time of the Han fell in 220 AD, it will be another 1,000 years before China will once again be united under one ruler, Genghis Khan's grandson, who ruthlessly crushed all resistance to Mongol rule in China. In the 4th century BC, Alexander overthrew the Persian Empire and then reorganized it into a larger empire. However, by the 5th century AD, the empire had fragmented and weakened so much that another group, Hephthalites, were able to repeatedly invade. In 484 AD, the invaders succeeded in slaying King Farouz, seizing the royal treasures and devastating the country. Persia was never fully united again until the conquest by Tamerlane, also known as Timur, in the late 14th century. In India, Ashoka the Great united India through conquest, and by approximately 250 BC extended the Mauryan Empire to its largest size. The Mauryans ruled all the Indian subcontinent. Subsequently, dynasties, however, ruled less and less effectively until the Gupta dynasty, greatly weakened by war and by internal cause, and last fell in 500 AD, whereupon the Hunas, known as the Huns in the west, destroyed the great North Indian cities and trading centers and the Buddhist monasteries in the northwest. The Huna rule in India was oppressive and brief. All of India became politically fragmented and will remain so for 700 years, as dozens of dynasties came and went, often at war with each other. It wasn't until the oppressive Muslim invaders began ruling large parts of India, beginning with the Delhi Sultanate in 1206 AD and continuing with the Mongol Empire in 1526 AD, that India was again reunited as a single political entity. So you can get had bad waiting on a savior. They went from one dictator to another during this Kali Yuga cycle. No savior, no spaceships. And before all of that in India, you had the Dravidians running India thousands of years ago. All of these cultures get to a height and then they decline and then they collapse. When they collapse, you don't know what the next ruler is going to be like. When you're in the Kali Yuga cycle, it's not going to be good. The next ruler could be just as oppressive as the last regime of centuries earlier. The only way out of that is elevation of consciousness and staying out of the way. You know what I'm saying? So that is how you're gonna get through the Kali Yuga cycle, is by elevating yourself, elevating consciousness. It's all about that consciousness of elevating. So you're gonna hear about, eat this mushroom, drink that mushroom, smoke this and smoke that. The ancient people incorporated everything to elevate themselves. They didn't just drink a tea, they didn't just eat mushrooms, they didn't just smoke some. That is the lazier cultures telling you to just smoke something or just drink something or just hit a mushroom, blah, blah, blah. These people, mind you, there's cultures vibrating all around us out of our level of perception for the most part. Only those that have very powerful clairvoyant abilities can see these cultures vibrating all around us. So what's the difference between these cultures, and there's not many people dwelling in these cultures, mind you, that separated them from the rest. They elevated their consciousness. So when their culture went into decline and collapse, a small portion of them was able to elevate themselves out of people's awareness. So when they go to digging up the Mayans or the Aztecs, there's still powerful cultures vibrating in those regions, just out of people's level of awareness and consciousness. You find the remains of those who didn't elevate themselves. They're all over the world. When they go to excavating these different sites, you're finding the remains of those that didn't elevate themselves. There are many people in that same area are vibrating on such a high level that still having culture and civilization going on a much higher frequency. So as the planet begins to vibrate higher, leaving the Kali Yuga cycle and going into what is called the Dharapara cycle, these cultures will begin to come into awareness of people living more so in this culture. Many of us these are 2,000-year cycles. You know what I'm saying? So you get into this cycle here, there's another couple thousand years before you get knee deep into the Dharapara cycle. So waiting for that is a recipe for disaster. What you can do is work on, as I stated earlier, work on ways to elevate yourself. Of all of the many parallels found in the myths described above, several stand out especially. All reached their current form sometime in the Kali Yuga, 700 BC to 700 AD. Kali is the lowest Yuga in the cycle. Number 2 point, all express the belief that the myth tellers live in the lowest of all ages they describe. All describe a process in which mankind has descended from higher ages in succession from a highest age through the less evolved age, and finally into the lowest age. All describe the highest age as a time of spiritual harmony, physical plenty, greatly expanded awareness. These, when you get into cycles like the Kali Yuga cycle, there is no need for farming. Like you read in the mythology, the god Asar or Osiris, I think in the Taurus cycle, you get this book, Jesus and the Zodiac. I think it's in a book called Jesus and the Zodiac, a book I read about 20 years ago or something like that. Jesus and the Zodiac, you'll learn in that book, among other books, that Osiris brought agriculture to the world, and that was during the Taurus cycle. What were they doing before agriculture hit the planet? You know what I'm saying? When the planet was on a high frequency, food grew naturally out the earth without having to cultivate it. There was no need for farming. The food was plentiful on the planet. But this is when the planet is in a much higher vibration. And the higher you go in the frequency on this planet, there's not that many people on the planet. So there's not going to, moving forward, there's not going to be that many people on the planet when you get into silver ages and golden ages. You know what I'm saying? Just how it is, the higher you go in vibration, there's just not going to be that many people on the planet anyway. So either way, the planet is going to naturally bump people off if they're not on the frequency. But your objective is to go beyond all these time cycles within, and that's by awakening your own godhood, your own immortal self, to where you can't reincarnate into the lower worlds unless you decide to come here as a wayshower to help people elevate themselves beyond the need of being able to, beyond having to come here in the first place based on low consciousness. You know what I'm saying? So the I'm not coming back here type of talk that's going on, that can be true if you're doing something consciously elevate. You know what I'm saying? Well, we're immortals, we're gods anyway. Listen, all that philosophy has its place, sure. But if you're not dwelling there consciously, you're going to come back here and you're going to reincarnate in one of these cycles based on where you are in consciousness. You have to elevate yourself or you'll be coming back. And mind you, there are millions of races in the lower worlds. You don't have to come back to planet Earth. You can go into another parallel zone or place that's similar to the Earth vibration. It's all based on where you are in consciousness. So the more you work on elevating yourself, the higher you're going to vibrate, and you won't be able to reincarnate in the lower worlds no way, because your frequency is going to be too high to come back here unless you choose to come back here to help people to evolve. So now more than ever, work on ways to elevate yourself consciously beyond the Kali cycle. All this fifth dimension talk, 5D talk, you elevate yourself. The solar energy, a solar magic, a sun work is the quickest way to 5D consciousness. There are beings, there are pure beings dwelling in the fifth dimension. They're immortals. They ain't eating nothing. They ain't breathing. They draw energy from the ethers like you used to before your DNA was tampered with millions of years ago. So now you've been tricked into believing that food is your life force, that you draw nourishment from the food stuff when your true nourishment comes from the stars and the ethers. remember, you are a divine being first before you incarnate into a human being. So your true life force energy is not in the food that you've been tricked into eating, nor the water. It's in the ethers. You get into the golden age, when you used to move or roam the earth as gods, you were not eating food. You were being nourished by the stars. You are immortal. You live for 10, 20, 30, 40,000 years. You ain't had to eat nothing. You was immortal. You know what I'm saying? So if you want to get back to that state within yourself, that's going to require practices, elevating your consciousness. There's no way around this. You can read about all this, the nonsense that takes place in the Kali Yuga cycle. One thing that is also common, aside from stupidity and ignorance, no savior. No spaceships, no none of that shit came to save these people. And I'm not laughing. I'm not making light of it. I'm just saying, though, a lot of people, based on looking at some movie, based on misinterpretation of the temple hieroglyphs, thinking you ain't got to do nothing, thinking somebody coming to save your ass based on the movie. Kali Yuga cycle is going to teach you different. You don't think these people, a couple thousand years ago, they was on real magic back then? They still succumbed to time cycles. They still got rolled over by time cycles. We're in a low cycle. These people was descending into the dire power of thousands of years ago. They were on much higher magic during this time than what we got going on today, and they still got rolled over by time cycles. Now the good news is nothing's going to stop your forward movement. This tyranny will get laid to the side. We've been around this time cycle thing for eons of time. We've been in the Kali Yuga cycle for eons of time on this planet. You know what I'm saying? So nothing's going to stop the rise. That is true. You don't need a movie decode or some stuff off a temple hieroglyph to understand that part. Steady time cycles, you know nothing's going to stop that rise. But you can be taken out of here in a bad way by refusing to evolve and elevate yourself. Because whoever is on the planet, these beings on the planet, quote unquote aliens on the planet, all of them are not on your side. You have your positive ones, yes, but you also have those who want to keep you where you are. And they're also bombarding the planet with lower frequencies, trying to control consciousness also. So you still have to learn ways to protect your energy, protect your mind, protect your consciousness. So if you're not on some next level practices, or at least seeking to find next level practices, the fluffy stuff is going to get you in trouble. Depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, these are coming from these entities bombarding your subconscious mind. They're fucking with your dream state. If you're not really protecting yourself, you thinking you're going to eat your way out of this, my ancestors got my back type of talk, you can get had bad. You know what I'm saying? You can get had bad. As a friendly reminder, or to bring it to your awareness, these people that succumb to time cycles also had ancestors. They sure did. They also had ancestors. They still succumb to time cycles. You connect with your ancestors, you connect with the gods to bring you the information to help protect yourself and to elevate your consciousness. Not to simply walk around talking about my ancestors got me, I'm okay, you know what I'm saying? And you don't do nothing with yourself. Sure, we're changing seasons. We're coming out of Kali Yuga into the dire power cycle. This is a higher frequency, the energy age. But this is still time, moving very slow. You speed up time, as I got the Yara ruling energy here in the center. Yara is a ruling energy to help speed up time. You work with this energy to speed up your manifestations, what you want to do with yourself. You know what I'm saying? I have videos, audio, video meditations involving Yara and various ruling energies. For those that are interested in that work, give me a holla. But you can speed up time, you can speed up your own consciousness evolution. But this is going to require practices. The fluffy stuff will get you in trouble right about now, because it's about to really go down on this planet. You know what I'm saying? I'm not making light of the situation, but it's really about to go down on this planet. So you're going to have to really find a way to protect your consciousness and really elevate yourself beyond the average, because we're in that Kali Yuga cycle. Of course, we're in the Aquarian age, but we're still coming out of a very rough period in terms of low consciousness. So the Kali Yuga cycles, learning about them, you'll learn that we've been at very high vibrational times on this planet, and we've been on very low vibrational times on this same planet. You want to escape the wheel of time cycles, and that's awakening to your highest potential. We're already gods, we're already immortals type of talk. I have you coming back here along with your beloved teachers who are teaching you. You don't have to do anything but just wait on spaceships. You know, all the spaceship sightings and shit. I know y'all, I know some people get tired of me talking smack about the spaceships. I'm very practical and very realistic. Beings that are coming from different dimensions on whatever ships they're coming from is going to recognize, your consciousness. Because they're on a very high frequency themselves, being able to come from different dimensions. So they're not entertaining nobody on a lower frequency. It doesn't matter what you look like. You know what I'm saying? I'm just being real. They're not entertaining nobody on a low frequency of consciousness. These are beings who are more likely to be on this planet, that have been around these cycles of time. They've elevated themselves to where they're not coming back on this planet in terms of having to reincarnate here. They'll come to assist you in your own evolution, but they're not dealing with you when you're a hot mess right now. You know what I'm saying? The cultures that are vibrating all around you, just out of your level of perception, they're not dealing with you when you're a hot mess. When your consciousness is low, you get up in there and disrupt all the shit they got going on. You know what I'm saying? So they're not entertaining you. You get to a certain frequency, you can wake up one day in a total different reality. You know what I'm saying? People will greet you, about time you show up, like welcome back type shit. You know what I'm saying? You can wake up into a whole nother frequency, a whole nother culture and civilization that's been vibrating all around you all the time. Once you elevate consciousness, there's a handful of people can perceive these cultures all around us. It's a handful that have an exceptional level of psychic abilities and clairvoyant abilities. So that is the order of the day, elevating consciousness, especially at this time right now, because as I stated earlier, it's about to get real messy across the board. These governments are trying to stay in power. So they are attacking consciousness right now. So you have to do all you know to protect your consciousness and to elevate yourself. So that is today's message. More on these time cycles in the next video, and I'll share some ways that one can, work on elevating their consciousness though. But it's going to involve some type of practice. You're not going to talk your way out of this. You're not going to eat your way out of this. And you can scream at your ancestors all you want. You still got to do some work. Just like your ancestors have to do some work. Those that are vibrating all around you, those on those spaceships, some people put work in. You know what I'm saying? They did something to elevate themselves. 12,000 books of the bad guy that was destroyed. Let's see what year this was. I talked about this early in the video. 12,000 books of the Magi. What do you think be in those books? Temple of Alexander, 700,000 scrolls being destroyed. What do you think be in those magic books? There's work in those magic books. There's something for you to do in those books of magic. 330 BC, Alexander in Persepolis, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, destroys 12,000 volumes of the Magi. 527 BC, the Persians burn Egyptian temples and papyrus. What do you think is in those books? It's something for you to do to awaken to your highest potential in divinity. It's always work. We get into a lower Kali Yuga cycle with all the little technology. We get real lazy. We ain't got time. We ain't got time to do nothing. And you better find time now because the wicked ones are trying to take you up out of here. They're trying to trap your consciousness by any means necessary. So you walking around here talking about your ancestors got your back. Some spaceships are coming back based on some damn movie decode. You're gonna be in trouble. You're gonna have to do something. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna have to do something to protect yourself. You're gonna have to do something to elevate yourself. You refuse to do so. This is also your prerogative, but it's not going to be anybody else's fault but your own. It's not going to be your teacher's fault. It's not going to be the government's fault. It's going to be your fault because you decided you ain't had time. You said you ain't got time to do nothing. So the wicked governments are going to teach you about being lazy and not making time to elevate yourself. Many of us already know what's about to take place, or what's already taking place. But for you who claim you ain't got time, I can only encourage you to start making time to elevate yourself, to heal for real yourself, and move forward. Learning how to stay out of the way, and staying out of the way is being into higher guidance. Higher guidance, you're gonna have to elevate yourself, attuned to the higher guidance. Otherwise, to the newbies on the path that may be watching this video, it is a error to base all of your movements based off something you see on TikTok videos, Instagram, and YouTube videos. Like, you don't govern your life based on what you're seeing from these platforms. You know what I'm saying? That is a blatant disrespect to your own self. It's a blatant disrespect to your spirit team that is guiding you. For you to be completely governed by what you see on social media these days, especially. You reconnect with your soul. All you got to do is sit still and invoke the wisdom of your soul. Connect with Mama, the divine feminine that dwells within you, and ask for guidance. Ask, what can I do to elevate my consciousness? Now you're going to be guided by your own inner wisdom. You're going to be guided by the mother that dwells within you. And now you see where that takes you. You don't look at something on social media, these Google scholars telling you what deity to work with, and if you don't work with this deity, it's going to wreck your life type shit. Oh my God. You don't go out like that. It's disrespectful to your own self to be governed by that type of shit. If you're going to work with it, when you connect with your soul, what I learned years ago, when you connect with the wisdom of your soul, when you connect with the mother, guess what happens? The deities are going to show up. Whatever you're asking for, deities are going to show up. Guides are going to show up when you put that intent day and night to the soul. So when this deity or this angel or whatever shows up, that's who you work with. You get as much information as you can on what deity, what dragon, whatever shows up, and then you move accordingly to that shit. You don't fucking look around on social media and see who's doing what, and then you follow that shit. That's very dangerous these days. So connecting with your soul first, connecting with the divine feminine within yourself, no matter if you're a man or woman, and be guided by that wisdom. Their deities, somebody is going to show up. That is who you work with now. This is natural and organic way to connecting with your own inner source. When that deity shows up, I can only encourage you not to be asking permission to anybody to work with a particular deity. My God. You don't need permission to work with a God that came to you to help you out. Your job is to learn about that deity as much as you can. Encyclopedia of Spirits by Judica ILL, even less, something like that. That's a 1,000-page book on a bunch of different deities, their attributes, colors, offerings, the whole nine. There's a book called Ancient Deities. I can't remember the author of that book. Find these books, Encyclopedia of Spirits, ancient deities. When a deity shows up, do as much research, do as much of your own research as you can about that energy and move accordingly. This is not the time for asking permission. There's a lot of predators preying on the newbies in the form of priests and priestesses, all these little fancy titles they got for themselves. Not all of them, but too many of them are now preying on those who don't know no better, and it's straight up sickening, I tell you. So your best route, when you connect with the soul, connect with your spiritual mother on the inner planes, whoever shows up, you do your own research and you learn about that deity and you move accordingly. The more you work with that deity that way, it's going to guide you into what you need to do to make a strong connection. It's personal. You don't need to ask permission to anybody, especially when a deity comes to you to work with. It ain't like you going searching and somebody told you to work with whatever deity. That's something totally different. When a deity comes to you to work with, you don't owe nobody an explanation for a whole goddess or a whole god that came to you to work with. Keep it private. There's a lot of psychos out there, you know, thinking they have a monopoly on a whole god. It's crazy, but it's a product of the Kali Yuga cycle. Stupidity, ignorance, all types of craziness is reigning supreme. We're coming out of it though, but we're still very prevalent. So as we move out of Kali into the Dharapara cycle in the next video, I cover the information on what this cycle is going to look like moving forward. This is not going to be in our lifetime though. This is centuries into the future, thousands of years. These are 2,000-year cycles or more once you start going into the higher cycle. So if you want to go from Kali to the golden age, that means you're going to do a lot of inner work. And solar work is the quickest way to elevating your consciousness. Not just laying in the sun, but finding those solar practices to where you're consciously working magic with the solar energy. Why do you think they're trying to block the sun all the time? There's a lot of people doing solar work these days. So they're trying to block the sun out because the more people work with solar magic and solar energy, that not only helps to elevate themselves, the more you awaken to your highest potential, the more just your presence breaks this shit down, breaks down the matrix. You know what I'm saying? That's the reason why they're trying to block out the sun. There's people doing a lot of solar work on this planet. Where do you think immortality and godhood comes from? People are connecting with solar energy, not just laying in the sun. They have solar practices, solar words of power that they are engaging in. These people, these elites know what's going on, you know what I'm saying? There's a reason why they're trying to block out the sun. Because the more you awaken to your highest potential, the more you break this shit down. But you're not going to talk your way out of it, though. You're going to have to do something. So if you have any questions, give me a holla. Until next time, peace.